How hard did you push it? Till I black out? Yes. Numerous times, yes.
What's happening, MuniciPals? This is your boy Big C and Ashton with us. We have a special guest here, a writer, a podcast host for one of me and Ashton, I would say probably our favorite podcast outside of our own, The Fried Egg. We have Garrett Morrison with us. How are you doing, Garrett?
I'm doing great, and I'm honored to be second place on that list. You know, number one, MuniciPals. Number two, the Fried Egg podcast. I really wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
And even with the no laying up sign right behind Ashton, right there.
It's okay if you put no laying up above. That's a great podcast too. They're fantastic.
No, right here, I've not showed this yet, but I've got the large version of the Pasa Tiempo Greens poster right here.
Oh, sweet!
As a Bay Area person, you got to have it. But you missed last week, or I guess when this will come out will be the last recording of last year, when Chris said that outside of his career, having a baby was like not the next best thing. I was like, Chris, just put the baby number one. Put the baby here. Club champion can be a couple rungs down. Yeah, it's great. LA golf shafts, get this hyper speed bullshit. Frankie's number one. We're just going to keep it up there.
So Chris is off to a rugged start as a dad, in other words. Already not ranking his baby high enough.
Bad take. I got roasted for it. It is what it is, but...
Look, we've all been there. We're very familiar with bad takes at the Fried Egg, and in fact, we sort of embrace them and continue them and explore them, and that's part of the beauty of this medium.
I've gotten multiple architects wrong. I actually last week had to apologize for a take because I called Gil Hance's guys cavemen, and it's actually Tom Doak's guys.
No, Gil Hance's guys are cavemen. There you go. You switched them around.
You know what? Because Ashton corrected me. Now I know it's correct, and now I'm messing my head up.
Now you've got the yips with it. It's sort of like what Brendan Porath on the Shotgun Start does with the Pellies, with Scott Pelly and Keith Pelly. Yeah, you've got the caveman yips, and that's okay. That's fine. You know what? And a lot of those guys who work for Doak / Hance are the same guys too. There are plenty who go back and forth between them. So you're completely justified in calling them all cavemen, as far as I'm concerned.
They play in the dirt. They're all cavemen.
There you go.
Okay, you're going to be a great guest because we're two morons. Like you're just pandering to our tripping all over ourselves.
I'm already, I feel like I am really pandering so far. I'm approving of everything that you're saying, and that's how this is going to go. Okay.
And now with the take Chris, and I picture Chris, just like going into work, just like listening to our own podcast every day. So let me go back in the archives and listen to episode 4. Like that's how I picture Chris in the shower, listen to him talk about cavemen. It's like, okay, no more listening to our podcast, Chris. Listen to other stuff. Like actually today I was listening, Garrett, to your pod with Bama Bearcat about golf in Japan. That's like one of my I just want to go play golf in Japan. It's that simple. Like such a cool episode.
Yeah, that was a really fun one. I learned a lot that I didn't know in that episode, and it sort of reminded me of how big the world of golf is. Because, at the Fried Egg, we cover mainly American golf. We are a U.S.-based company. That's basically what we can do. We really don't have the budget to go on spectacular trips to South Korea or New Zealand or Japan. So we cover U.S. golf, but it was really fun to find out about Japanese golf and all the different things that they do there and the different kinds of courses. It's a big, fascinating world out there.
Yeah. And I'll also give you a shout out too. I have a friend who's Japanese, and she's not a golfer, but we were talking about it last week, and she actually said that she appreciated how you guys started off by saying like, "Hey, we have an outsider's perspective here." Because she was saying that a lot of people sort of like to come with the perspective of like, this is how it is, and it's sort of like, okay, man, just because you've come to Japan for like 1 week and eaten some noodles and played some golf, like, doesn't mean you actually know what's going on. So.
I did not want to portray 2 white American men as the experts on Japanese golf. I wanted to make that clear from the outset.
100%. Well, also, Chris, I guess a good place to start is like tell the people how you two met. Like how this came to be is I remember the text message that said, "You're not going to believe." Oh God, I'm doing the "you're not going to believe" thing. You're not going to believe who I just fit. So tell the people how this happened.
Yeah. So,
Chris, you want to do that one?
So actually, the company I work for, as everybody knows, I don't even need to say, Club Champion, actually sponsors the Fried Egg. And so with that sponsorship, the guys that are on the podcast or work with the company were able to come into their local Club Champion and get fitted for some clubs. So I was emailed by our marketing program saying, hey, Garrett lives in the Portland area. He's going to come in. Here's his email. Contact him, see what works for him, and we'll get him into the shop. And they gave me I think we did a long game fit for you. So we did all your woods, basically driver through hybrids.
We did the woods, yeah.
Yep. And funny story there. Garrett actually halfway through it kind of stops and he goes, we're getting pretty deep. I didn't realize how many clubs we could actually kind of squeeze in here because I
didn't want to rip you off. I didn't want to I felt like I was walking away with a lot because frankly, I play woods and hybrids up pretty high in my bag.
We went pretty deep in the woods and hybrids, and the thing is they didn't give me a budget or tell me anything that I had to stick to. So whatever was in that long game sector, I was going to go with. So we didn't get in trouble. We got Garrett set up with a really good set. How are you liking them? I haven't talked to you since you've been playing with them.
I'm really enjoying them. It's great to go get fit and just be able to be secure and confident about what you've got in your bag so that you don't go searching for other things. So, there's the Rogue ST driver and a 4-wood and a 7-wood is basically what we ended up going with. And then this is the weapon here, a 5 hybrid, a TaylorMade Stealth 5 hybrid, which is 25 degrees. And that thing's a weapon. I mean, the ball just goes straight up in the air in a good way and lands softly. And, my club head speed isn't the lowest in the world, but I don't have a lot of pop, really.
But your speed was above average to what a average golfer is. So, I mean, you definitely have game. Yeah. You find contact very well. That was something that we found out. The contact wasn't an issue. That wasn't something we were trying to find. It was just maximizing your accuracy, finding more fairways, and getting you a little more distance.
Yeah. And that was, that was really the outcome. And, I have, grown accustomed to using a 24 or 25 degree hybrid. And I think more people should do it. I guess some people have problems with hybrids, but it's, compared to a 5-iron, if I'm hitting a 5-iron, once I get down to that, modern 5-irons around, well, they can go down really low now, but the 5-iron in my, set of irons that I have now is 26 degrees or so. Once I get down into that area, it's getting hard to get the ball as high in the air as I want it to be. And it's starting to kind of, there's sort of an accordion effect with my 6-iron at that point. I've gotten on a launch monitor before and seen what my carry distance is with a 6-iron versus a 5-iron. And the 5-iron is just not going that much farther. And I think that's the case with a lot of people. That, they have their irons. They think, okay, I need everything down to a 4-iron. Well, most of the time, I don't think they're hitting their 5-iron much farther than a 4-iron. And that's why this 5 hybrid is such a good club, because it clearly goes farther than my 6-iron. It's a different club. It serves a different purpose in the bag. And so, I'm really enjoying it. And enjoying the life of the 7-wood as well. That's a new one for me. And so that's been cool.
And so you're not, the one thing we found out was you're not a high ball hitter and you're not a super spinny, player as well. So that's one thing I would tell people. If you're not a high ball hitter, you're not a spinning, you don't spin the ball a lot, you should venture into a 4-wood. And that's why we found that, works really well for you, because one, you're not going to lose distance. The minuscule amount of degrees between a 3-wood and a 4-wood is 1.5 degrees. So all it's doing is getting you a little bit more pop off the face, getting you that height to carry it further. And we're in the Pacific Northwest, so carry is king out here. We're not getting rollout throughout most of the year. So,
especially in Portland.
Yeah, so as long as I can keep the ball in the air for you, that was the most important thing. But kind of how your bag is set up is very similar to Ashton, except we call him Hybrid Boy because he only has a 3-wood and then, 3 hybrids in your bag?
A bunch of hybrids? Strong.
Well, I used to. I changed it a bit. So Chris got me fit into. I now play. I mean, I just feel bashful because of Bryson, but I use like LA golf shafts, which help me. So I now have a 5-iron in the bag. But what I had previously was I had a 25 degree that was my 5-iron, and then I had a 4 hybrid, and then I had my 2008 Cleveland high bore, and then I was trying to get Chris to help me to find like a 3-wood. I was gonna have 4. Now it's down to 2, but there's been a lot of people look at my bag and they're like, so it goes 6-iron hybrid driver. It's like, Chris finally fit me into a 3-wood that works. But yeah, I mean, to your point, I mean, the reason I loved that, especially that 25 degree club, is you just swing and it goes 200, goes right up in the air. I mean, I used it last weekend, and I clicked it down a little bit to make that my 4, but I had 210 in, and it actually hit, and I don't know, it just hit and stopped, and from it feels like cheating, right? From 210, the ball just hits and stops. Right? Okay, that's great. I mean, and even how good you are, I mean, you're not going to do that, and that's the difference between us and pros, right? I think the most, like Rory's drives are amazing, but watching those guys hit long irons way up in the air. That's just a gear that I don't have. I don't think many of us have. And so it's like the fact that we have technology is huge. I think actually Andy had on, when he was talking to Ogilvy, I think Ogilvy actually pointed out that he thought the biggest cheat in golf essentially was the hybrid, right? Because he's like, yeah, driver helps. But he's like, the fact that you do not have to hit long irons up in the air, it's an under talked about part of technology where nobody's saying you're into hybrids, but for me and you is just like Sunday golfers, like it's a huge game changer. Yeah. The long iron used to be the ultimate test of ball striking. And, there are players who still play long irons because they have problems with hybrids. And so, that's kind of a self-sorting that happens at the professional level. But for people who can hit a hybrid well, it's an absolute weapon. And, something I noticed, like most male players should not be modeling the tops of their bags, I don't think, off of PGA Tour pros. Like, that's ridiculous. No. It's not the same game. But if you look in the bags of LPGA Tour pros, then you start seeing some trends that are a little more similar to what the trends should be among, say, the average middle-aged male player. Now, the average middle-aged male player is not going to hit the center of the club face as often as an LPGA Tour pro or really anything like it, obviously. But the pure speed might be somewhat similar. And what you see in a lot of LPGA Tour pros' bags is a hybrid up around 25 to 27 degrees. Nelly Korda has one. She has like a 25 or 26 degree hybrid. And, and so I asked the question to any, average amateur male player, are you better? Do you have more speed than Nelly Korda? And most of the time that answer is no, I don't have as much speed as Nelly Korda, but she finds usefulness in that higher lofted hybrid. And you can see why. Once you get fitted to a proper one with the right shaft, the right head, it's, it makes things a lot easier, maybe too easy.
Well, one thing I'll tell you is, as a club fitter and within our company, the amount of people that I fit in over a 4-iron, so 3-iron, 2-iron, even in driving irons, is less than 20%. So, the people that I'm fitting into driving irons or 2 and 3 irons are usually like really good AJGA players, like youth, like kids or college players. And it's usually always men. I don't think I've ever fit a woman ever or anybody that plays in mid-ams or, over the age of, 35 in 2-iron, 3-iron setups. The majority of people now are going with 7 woods. That's, probably one of our biggest upticks in club sales right now. And, I've even fit a lot of people in 9 woods just because some guys can't hit hybrids. And so, they'll hit a 3-wood really well, but they still need to fill that gap in the bag. So the 7-wood, 9-wood, and what Callaway considers the heaven wood, which is like in between a 7 and 9, those are all really popular as of now, and you're seeing more people on tour even playing the 7-wood.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's sort of the new 5-wood in a lot of ways because the loft is sort of similar. But yeah, I've seen there's been a lot of buzz around 7-woods. I think Dustin Johnson might occasionally sort of goof around with one, and Jason Duffner has had one forever. And so, yeah, there are some good models out there of the kinds of clubs that people should be looking at. I just think it's way too common to see those 4-irons, especially now that a lot of kind of big manufacturer 4-irons are like 19 degrees or something.
Well, like my 4-iron,
that's gonna be really hard to hit even if it's beefed up.
I play the Hanma forged irons, and mine are all 3 degrees strong compared to what standard is now. So like my pitching wedge, I play at 40 degrees, and that's most people's 9-iron. And so my 4-iron is most people's 2-irons. It's 17 degrees. So
wow.
People,
do you add a little bit of loft to it in your swing?
I do. I'm a high ball, high spin hitter, so that's why I do play really,
you need
strong lofted clubs. Ashton's seen it. I was using a loaner driver when we did our Vegas trip, just because I was waiting for my new driver to come in, and this is why you get fitted, because I don't think I've ever driven the ball worse in my life than on that Vegas trip that we were on. It was like
it was 220-yard pop-ups essentially. I was hitting my 19-degree hybrid like 20 yards past Chris's driver. I just think that I think in general across the board, whether it's clubs or playing, you take the ego out, you take your medicine, and again, go in there and just listen to someone like Chris. It makes a huge difference. But Garrett, I'm curious for you. I mean, it's funny. I feel like I know you a little bit just through listening to your voice a lot. But I feel like I have a sense of Andy's game. I sort of have Brendan's game too. Sort of like Brendan playing once in a while and having 19 kids. But I don't have any sense of kind of your golf game. So it's what are you working on something? We kind of just we have people on for the first time to talk about their golf game and what are you aspiring to do? Or it's not aspiring to do anything, just play and have fun. What is your golf game like?
Well, Chris can probably give some insight into that. The low ball and low spin is I play a right to left. I'm a right hander. I play a right to left shape, and I'm pretty consistent. The thing that I can do is hit a lot of fairways, and then I have a pretty solid short game. I'm a nervy putter, and I am not terribly consistent with my irons, I don't think. I'm not always finding the right level in contact with my irons. Sometimes it's a little bit fat, sometimes it's a little thin, and so that's something to work out. But that's sort of the outlines of my game. When I play really well, when I have my best rounds, it's when my iron game turns on a little bit. When I have an average round, I'll hit a lot of fairways and I'll get some decent up and downs. And that's basically what it is. I don't think that I am going to improve that much more in my life. I would like to, and I work on it a little bit. I do go to the range on occasion, and I like to practice short game, and that's probably why I'm decent at that. But especially now, I have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old, and so there's not a whole lot of time to work on the golf game. Now, my hope is that my kids will eventually want to, go to a golf course with me. Right now, my son is willing to go to the driving range with me, and sometimes we do that, and that's really fun. But I don't want to push it too hard. I hope that just at some point they both come to me and say, yes, what we want to do is go play golf. And so I hope that eventually that will happen. But, to give people an idea of my history in terms of playing golf, I didn't play competitively when I was younger. I played competitive water polo. I was a competitive swimmer. Golf was not my game when I was younger. I liked playing it. My dad was passionate about it. I liked golf courses early on. I read a lot about golf when I was a kid, but I was never as into playing it as I was into reading about it and thinking about it and following it. I think that as I've gotten into my 30s, this is probably the time when I'm most interested in playing golf as I've ever been, in a weird way. Because when I was a kid, I just, it wasn't going out and playing golf. I did it on occasion with my dad, but it really wasn't my passion to try to get better at the game.
That kind of leads us into kind of the second question we had was, when you go out and play, do you go out and play to shoot a score, or is it more of the point of seeing the architecture and experiencing the course? When you go out and play, what's the most important thing to you? Is it camaraderie with friends, shooting a specific score, or actually just experiencing either a new course or reinvigorating a course that you already love?
Well, this is kind of a punt, but it's different things in different scenarios. It can be any of those things, really. Probably most often when I'm playing golf, it's going to be about the course and about the architecture, because I don't play an awful lot when I'm home. I have a lot going on in my family. I have a lot going on in the job, and there's just not a whole lot of time to go out and play regularly. Sometimes I do when I'm home, but, it's not frequent. So a lot of my golf is played on the road when we're on company trips, going to see new courses that I haven't seen before. And when I'm playing that kind of golf, I really am outwardly focused on the golf course, trying to take in as much as I can. Afterwards, I'll take notes, and I'm not really focusing on how I'm playing. It's not that I don't care how I'm playing, but that's not the point of my being out there. And I don't prepare. I don't really do anything to make sure that I play well. And so that's most of my golf. There are other times when I'm playing at home, or if I'm playing a course that I've played before, that it's much more about the company. Sometimes I really like playing by myself. I don't do this as often as I used to. When I was a teacher, my summers would be free. This is before I started working for the Fried Egg. I was an English teacher, and my kids would be doing something. My wife would be at her job, and I would get to go out and play golf, and I would often do it by myself. And in those situations, it would be very much about just trying to, focus on something, this golf game that is challenging and absorbing, and get in, if I can, a flow state sort of, and take my mind off everything that's going on in my life. And that would be the point of playing golf in that kind of situation by myself, just going out to do it, and often I would try to, play well and see how well I could play, but that was less the point. It was more about, doing some kind of mental maintenance, and that's something I really love doing. So I think golf can be many different things. It's not always about the architecture, but if I'm playing a new course and it's got an interesting design, that's probably what I'm going to be thinking about the whole time.
When you're at home, what in let's say your wife goes, "Hey, get out and play." What course around you is the go-to staple course that you're going to get out and try to get around in?
I don't have a big go-to course. When I'm home, I'll often play with my dad. He lives nearby. And, there's a couple of local courses out here. I live in Happy Valley, which is in the southeast suburbs outside of Portland. And, my dad lives in the Estacada area, and there are a couple of local courses between us that we like to go to, Mountain View Golf Course and Springwater, which is a 9-hole golf course. They're both, really pretty and everything, but I don't think anything super special in terms of design, but they're fun places to go play. If I want to go play like a nice, semi-serious round of golf, often Stone Creek in Oregon City is a great place. It drains wonderfully, which is a big plus in Oregon. And there are some really good holes out there. There are some stinkers as well, but that's okay. It's a beautiful spot. They do a great job kind of being custodians of the environment out there, and I think that's really the important thing, more than any nitpicks about the design that I might have. And so I'll often go there. I always enjoy myself at Stone Creek. I like going to Heron Lakes if I want a little bit of a challenge. Go play Great Blue. That's another place that's pretty affordable and offers a good product. If I want to drive a little bit, the public course in the area that I really love is Forest Hills, which is out kind of west of the city a ways in Cornelius, which is not a town that many people have heard of, but maybe people have heard of Beaverton, and it's kind of more, it's not in Beaverton, but it's, you can drive there pretty easily from Beaverton. Forest Hills is fantastic. That place could be, I'm not suggesting that they do work on that course or that they do a restoration or anything, because it's really good as it is. But if they did, and they did it right, it could be like the best course in Portland. Like it's really that good. The bones are that good.
I've talked about Forest Hills in nauseum. I think it's
Good.
one of those courses that is overlooked by people in the Portland area because it is kind of out there. And you have so many other options within the Portland area that most people just don't want to make the trek out there. And
which I understand. Yeah. Most of the time, I don't want to make the trek either. It's an hour drive just about from where I am, depending on traffic. And that's unpleasant. But it's a great course, isn't it?
It's so good. And it's always in really good shape. It gets a little mushy in the winter. That's the only, I would say, downfall, because it is fairly flat. It's a little bit older of a course. There is some undulation in the course, but where it is and when it was built, it just wasn't built to drain. And so it does get a little seepy, but when you do catch it the perfect time, I don't think there is another course in the area that beats it, especially for the rate. I think you get out there, walking rate is between $30 and $45 to play it. I mean, it's
it's so pretty out there. It's like in the middle of there aren't any houses around. It's like out in the middle of kind of undulating farm country. It's just beautiful, and so it's a great little getaway. I forgot to mention Eastmoreland, which is kind of near where I live. That's probably the quickest drive to what I would call a very good golf course. Probably could be an excellent course. I wish they hadn't decided to plant so many trees and kind of straight lines down each fairway. I think they did that probably in the 60s and 70s. But, it's a Chandler Egan course, and the back nine, what was the original nine on the course. I'm sure you've talked about it on the podcast, so I'm probably repeating things that people already know.
Just hearing from you.
Eastmoreland is terrific. Yeah, it's that back nine is on a special piece of land. I wish they would clear out some of the vegetation. I'm not sure if that's forthcoming, but you can see what that golf course could be, and as it is, very fun place to play.
Yeah, speaking to Akbar and the guys at the Northwest Golf guys, Travis and Zach. I mean, all three of them were on the actual list, or they were on the group for the city of Portland for Parks and Rec, and their big hang up and why they no longer are on that board is because the city just does not understand the golf side of things when it comes to Park and Rec. And the things that they would bring up and want to change and want to have done, the city just doesn't get it. And Eastmoreland is one of those places where they've said over and over and over again that if we just clear some of the vegetation out here, it's just going to be known as one of the best public courses in the Pacific Northwest. And again, that back nine has got to be some of the best holes, in public golf in the area.
So cool. And so it's 10, 11 kind of around the lake, 12 par 3, 13 the par 5, that where you kind of hopscotch on little islands of fairway that are with ravines kind of wrapping around. If they cleared out some of the blackberry bushes and some of the trees there, you would be standing up on that hill looking out at the rest of the course, and it would be one of the most beautiful holes in American public golf. But as it is, you can't see it because it's surrounded by trees. But if you walk there with an eye towards what would this be if the sight lines were opened up a little bit, you start to realize, oh, this is like a first-rate public golf course here. And so hopefully at some point they'll recognize it. I mean, Chandler Egan's a fairly important architect. You could make the argument to a city council, like imagine if you had a building by a famous architect that had fallen into disrepair and just needed a little bit of a touch-up, and wouldn't you want to do that? Wouldn't it be kind of an embarrassing thing for a city to have this great building and have it be in bad shape? People understand that, but they don't seem to understand that argument when it comes to golf courses as much.
Well, Garrett, I'm curious from your perspective. Like, I was just I've been listening to because I'm a psychopath, I've been listening to kind of the Shotgun Start archives, and one of the ones I was listening to was I don't remember what episode it was, but it was Gary Player going on a 3-minute demented dialogue about how he was an arborist and all this stuff. So I'm curious for you. I kind of know from hearing, arguments around it, but for you as someone in the industry, what would you say to someone who's like this whole tree debate, right? Tree removal. Like, how do we talk about this to non-golfers in a way where we're not trying to be pushy, but we're trying to like how would you make the case if we were able to get a meeting with the Portland City Council? What would you tell them?
I probably wouldn't say anything that would be super convincing because I'm not a very good politician, and I probably wouldn't hit the points that I should hit because it's such a complicated debate, and narrowing it down is sort of hard. One thing that people should know about the discussion around tree removal is that it's not an either or. It's not no trees or lots of trees. There's an in between that I think a course like Eastmoreland should go for. So that's one thing. We're very few people propose that every tree should be eradicated from every golf course. And, the debate gets to this kind of polarized point where people who are in favor of trees think that tree removal people want all trees to be gone. And it just becomes unproductive. It becomes like politics, basically. And so I would say that there's an in-between that most golf courses should be striving for. And in the Pacific Northwest, that probably means quite a few trees. There's a lot of trees up here. And so golf courses in the Pacific Northwest should, in most places, probably have quite a few trees. At a course like Eastmoreland, what you have is a golf course that added a bunch of non-native trees after it was designed. For whatever reason, I don't know why they added them. But the addition of these trees has put a stress on the turf of that golf course. There are many places where the turf is suffering because it does not get sunlight. And it has put a damper on the golf that's played there. In order to make Eastmoreland Golf Course the habitat that it should be, where grass can thrive, where trees can thrive, where animals can thrive, and where golfers can have the best time possible, and where, people who are just visiting and walking through that little kind of garden that they have on the back nine, and I know it has a name, I'm forgetting it right now, like Crystal Lake Garden, and it's beautiful. If, people's experience of that walk would be so enhanced if they could see around the property a little bit. And if the trees, they were, seeing as well were native to that landscape. There are willows out at Eastmoreland. I mean, they just planted stuff there. They didn't have a regard for what trees belong in a Pacific Northwest habitat. And so that golf course should be about what specifically the Pacific Northwest is. It should have native trees, and it shouldn't have so many of them that the trees dominate the entire area and affect the golf in bad ways. So I think that I do something like that. And I don't think the city council would be convinced by that, but that's my stance on it.
That's one course that every time Ashton's come out, we haven't been able to get a tee time. Either they've had tournaments out there. It's probably the most played course between there, Heron, and Rose City. I mean, those are probably the three most played courses in the greater Portland area. And that's the thing is it's packed. And that's why the city isn't going to touch it or do anything, because they're not losing any money. They're making hand over fist when it comes to the tee sheet being stocked and always full. So the city just doesn't see a need to change anything if there isn't a problem in their mind, because the tee sheet's full all the time. And a little bit of that is because where Eastmoreland is located, it's a 20 to 25-minute drive to any other golf course. So if you live in the city, you know, outside of Rose City being probably the closest to it, it's really your only option unless you want to drive 30 minutes to, you know, another option. So everybody that lives within the city, and most people don't realize Eastmoreland is probably one of the most affluent areas in Portland. I mean, some of these houses
fancy neighborhood.
Yeah, the house is a border.
Yeah, and the golf course was sort of part of that plan as well, as I understand it, when it was designed. This was like, it's part of this neighborhood. It was imagined as being, you know, not just the golf course and the neighborhood, but the two kind of relate to each other.
And that's where that park side of it comes in too, because it, you know, anybody, one of the coolest parts about the course is the hole you were just talking about. When you finish that hole, you literally have to walk out onto the sidewalk, onto the street to get to the next tee box. You know, there isn't a walkway that keeps you on the course. You're legitimately leaving the course and coming back onto it, which is...
Yeah, you kind of get lost for a second the first time you play it. You're like, am I headed the right direction? Seems like I'm headed down a street right now.
Normal public golf, there's no signs telling you where you need to go. It's just you're figuring it out on the way. But it's a beautiful property, and again, things like that would be wonderful to see, but I'm also very content with playing what I have with it. Again, we all would love to see these things happen, but city-owned municipal courses are probably one of the hardest things. As you probably, you know, being in the industry and knowing these things with some of the other things that have gone on throughout the country, city-owned municipal courses are probably the hardest things to get people on board to change. When they're privately owned, you're dealing...
It's like my favorite, Sharp Park, baby. Sharp Park. I mean,
they've had a hell of a time trying to get that place restored or renovated or whatever they're able to do, considering that most of the golf course is gone and will have to be permanently gone.
We did just see a video.
That's they at least kept the golf course, right? At least Richard Harris and Bo Links were able to keep the golf course a golf course as opposed to being taken over by a developer. So that's good.
And we saw one of our close friends actually just posted a video of kind of a digital remodel of Sharp, and it seems like hopefully they're headed that way. I mean, with the amount of money that the city of San Francisco is making just based off of Harding Park and the crazy astronomical pricing that they're charging people that come and play it from outside the city, you would hope that them owning Lincoln and Sharp, they'd be putting some of that money back into those courses so that they could have a trio of, you know, just epic public courses that bring people into the city that want to play, and it's not just left out for Harding.
Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it with San Francisco, but that would be great. And I think that what you're describing is the same thing that Portland could do with Eastmoreland. It could be a gem. It could be an attractor. They could upcharge for people who are from out of town if they wanted to, which is the model that, say, Charleston Municipal is following right now after their renovation. They're charging folks from out of town, but they're keeping the rates very affordable for the local players, and they did something really interesting with the architecture there. So I think it's possible, but I also hear what you're saying, where the course is successful. It is fun to play. It's a cool course as it is. And they're it's packed. The tee sheet is packed. And so who am I to come in and say it's not good enough? So that's absolutely valid.
So kind of leading into a project that you guys have been working on, teaching turf in Sandhills. Give us a little bit of insight on that and the project that you guys are doing there.
Yeah, so it's this is sponsored by Toro, and what Toro is sort of allowing us to do is tell stories about the turf industry that are compelling and that we have complete control over, and so that's been a really good relationship. And so one of the ideas that we came up with for covering the turf industry in a different way was to go document some turf internship programs and show what it was like for young people to come into the turf industry and to have some of their first experiences working on a maintenance crew at a great golf course. And so for our first subject in what will hopefully be a series that will recur maybe annually, we went and saw what this dual internship was like at Ballyneal in Colorado and Sandhills in Mullen, Nebraska. These are two world-class golf courses. And the internship that those two turf programs offer is unique. Students get to spend several weeks at Ballyneal, several weeks at Sandhills, and they really get an incredible experience of some kind of truly unique golf courses and turf situations and climates and all that. And so, these are some of our favorite golf courses in America, and so we started with that. But also, the grounds crews at both of those golf courses are led by a couple of our favorite people. It's Jared Kalina, the superintendent at Ballyneal, and Kyle Hegland, the superintendent at Sandhills. These are folks that we knew beforehand. They're some of the nicest and most talented people in the industry, and so we knew that it would be really good to go just sort of arrive for a couple of days at each golf course a few times through the summer, interview the interns, interview Kyle and Jared, and just get a sense for what this turf internship was like, what experience the students were getting out of it and what it was like to run these courses, maintain these courses, and some of the challenges that they face, not only locally, but in terms of the kind of national trends in the turf industry. And so it was incredibly interesting to do it. And now we're just kind of putting the finishing touches on the videos and putting them out. We released our first installment last week, and we've got our second episode coming out tomorrow night, which is going to be Wednesday night. And so, we're really proud of it, and it was a lot of fun to do.
Yeah, and I thought it was super cool too how really inclusive in the sense of your first subject being like a 30-year-old who's kind of finding his path and getting into golf. Because I think we're both happy in our careers, but I'm not gonna lie to you, at a moment where I was like watching him and I was like,
I could do that.
Man, that would be really cool.
Well, and Ashton,
really cool, and hopefully people can watch that.
Ashton went to the University of Georgia, and they have a really good turf program out there, and that's one thing Ashton says all the time, where he almost wishes he minored in turf management, because as a senior you get the option to work on two projects, and it's either the football field or the golf course. And
which is like what a senior thesis,
that's
right?
Great.
It's like,
what's the golf course out at University of Georgia?
So it's just called the University of Georgia Golf Course.
Cool.
It's really good.
Yeah.
I mean, they had a nationwide tour event. I say nationwide because I don't think they ever got to Corn Ferry.
Yeah, or
Actually,
web.com.
so much so that a couple of months ago, there was a company event, an ADP sponsored thing, and I talked to Harris English, and I literally did the Keith Pelley, Scott Pelley Yip thing. I was like, Harris, didn't you win there? And he's like, nah, that was Hudson. And I was like, damn it. I was like, and he literally goes, it happens all the time. And I was like, I'm
yeah,
so
because
sorry.
you guys look exactly alike. And maybe you should look less alike if you don't want people to confuse you. I mean, let's think about their responsibility in this situation.
Well, they're both from the South, so maybe one of them should...
There's Harris in the middle.
Ashton is holding up a picture. Yeah.
Of
very
Harris
nice.
in the middle. But yeah,
one of them should grow a mullet since they're from the South. So that could
exactly.
No, dude,
that's what I'm talking about. Or just like a mustache, just something to differentiate these two gentlemen.
We're forgetting Hudson's a live boy.
That's true.
Like,
they'll never play again.
But the confusion might have even higher stakes now because people will think that Harris English has defected to live.
That could be a bad thing.
That's a bad reputational thing for Harris and his sponsors.
Yeah.
This is true. Yeah. No,
well, we were talking about teaching turf in the Sandhills and your desire to, at a late period in your career, go into turf. And this is what our subject in the documentary, Dustin DeLand, has done. And we knew he would be a good audience surrogate because a lot of people in our audience, especially on YouTube, are going to be right around his age. You know, early 30s, mid 30s. That's kind of the sweet spot for the Fried Egg audience. And we knew that people would kind of relate with him. And so I'm glad that that's turned out to be the case.
I don't think
it's
ever a bad time to, especially in your 30s, late 20s. Something that I did was I completely flipped the script on what I was doing career-wise. I did your plethora of sales and marketing jobs throughout my 20s. And, when I married my wife and we were going through, entering into COVID, it was one thing that I had a conversation with my wife about that, I really wanted to get back into golf. I played a lot of junior golf, played a lot of competitive golf when I was younger, took a big break through my 20s, really didn't pick up a club through most of my mid-20s just because I was dealing with everything else that was going on in life. And when COVID hit, that was when I decided that, hey, I want to chase my passion. I want to get back into it. And I completely flipped the script. And that's when I started, fitting and building golf clubs. And I started from the bottom, basically running a build shop in the Bay Area for a company called Golf Mart, which most people know as Edwin Watts or, they've got 80 something.
There's a Golf Mart in Monterey area, isn't there? There's a seaside golf mart. Those are my guys. Love that shop. Actually, I really miss that place. That's a good golf shop.
Golf Mart is a very good. I mean, for big box store, it's your go-to if you're looking for kind of a big box store that carries everything. But then I kind of wanted to step up from there, and that's what led me to what I'm doing now. And me and Ashton being knuckleheads doing the podcast and things like that. So, there's never a time in your life that you shouldn't think that, you're stuck where you're at and you can't, change things or chase a dream. You can always do that. One of our favorite stories is, I don't know, have you ever played Coos Golf Club?
I haven't. I've driven by it many times. I kind of know the story where somebody bought it and they've kind of turned it into a bit of a hub out there, haven't they?
So that's actually one of our good buddies, Andre, and his brother Paulo. The story is kind of crazy. Andre worked for ESPN up in Seattle. He was one of the producers for ESPN in Seattle. And his brother sent him a Craigslist ad for this golf course in Coos. And the course was selling for like $600,000. And it had a house built on it. It was a massive piece of property. Him and his wife went down there, and 2 weeks later, the owner of the course offered it to them at 0% interest at $600,000.
0%
interest. So they
hard to turn down that offer.
So basically, he splits his time from Seattle and Coos. He drives back and forth 15 to 20 times a year. His brother lives full time, down there helping with operations. But they've absolutely turned that course completely around, and now most of the caddies that caddy abandoned, they have left Crossings as their kind of home course outside of the resort, and a lot of them play out at Coos now, and Coos is kind of like the home track for abandoned caddies. And so it's been a huge change in seeing things like that. He was in his 40s with kids that were teenagers in high school and decided to quit his cush job with ESPN, and chase kind of a dream to own a golf course and run and operate it with his family. And it's just one of the coolest stories in golf.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when I joined the Fried Egg, I was 35. So I'm very familiar with a sudden and, to many people, inexplicable career change. So I'm a big believer in that. If you can manage it, it's it can be a scary thing to do financially. It's there's a lot of doubt that comes with a big career change like that. You were on one path toward one kind of life, and you decide suddenly to change it. Definitely takes a little bit of guts. It's maybe not the smartest decision in the world, but sometimes it really pays off, and you only live once, so might as well try.
Can you tell us more about that, Garrett? Because I know you said you were an English teacher before, but how did this come to be? How did you end up meeting Andy and having this be your career now?
Well, I've always been interested in writing. I've done some editing. When I was in school, I majored in English in college. I went into a PhD program after college in English, and that was sort of going to be my career. So this was before career change number one. I was planning to go into academia, but it's a long story, but I decided not to do that. And I started teaching at the high school level and teaching English, and eventually found myself at Stevenson School, which is a boarding school in Pebble Beach. And when I arrived there, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this job and going to teach English, going to coach water polo, coach swimming. And I'm also going to have on the side something that I'm developing with my writing. I wanted to do something in that vein during my summers off and make sure that I keep kind of the creative side of my life alive. And when I moved to the Pebble Beach area, obviously golf was all around me, and I was inspired to kind of get back into the game. Pacific Grove municipal golf course, Pacific Grove Golf Links, as they call it now, which is a little bit grand, but that was really the course that got me back into it, that invited me back into the game. I love that golf course, and obviously the Dunes 9 is something really special. And so I started playing there a lot. I started playing, with other faculty members at the school, and caught the bug again. And so it was kind of a good fit to start writing about golf. And I basically just started a blog and started posting things on it about golf courses and golf course architecture, and started a Twitter account where basically I said, hey, please go read my blog. That was essentially what the Twitter account was at first. And it was through that I got to know Andy. And Andy got to a point after he started the Shotgun Start where he wanted to hire somebody else for the company. And he got in touch with me and hired me. That's the short version of the story, but it's really not any more complicated than that.
And it's funny because I just listened to your episode you did with Shane Bacon about his child book, and you guys actually talked about how you both started kind of in that space where some guys that are a little bit younger than us really don't really know how big blogs were back in the day.
Yes.
And it's not even
Absolutely.
that far back in the day. That's how fast technology changes and social media changes. And things like that evolve. But blogs were where you found any of your niche information that you loved about a specific topic. There was a blog for everything, kind of like there's a podcast for everything now. You can literally find information or find a topic that a podcast bases itself off of for everything now. And blogs were huge. It was kind of your median to get your name out there and, really talk about what you love or wanted to talk about. And so that really enlightened me when I heard you and Shane talking about that, and how long you guys have been doing blogs and things like that prior to getting to where both of you guys are at right now.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that about Shane Bacon, but yeah, he was one of the OG golf bloggers. I guess Jeff Shackelford is like the true OG golf blogger, but Shane started his blog in like 2008. I started my very small golf architecture blog in like 2015. That was after blogs were already kind of not a thing, but it was really the only thing I knew how to do. I had done some blogging when I was younger. I did some freelance writing about music and film and literature, and I had a blog that I would kind of maintain off and on, in addition to kind of sending out articles for publication and things like that. And so when I got back into golf and when I decided that I was going to do some golf writing, that was my frame of reference. That was the only thing I knew how to do. I didn't know how to start a podcast. I didn't know how to start doing videos. For God's sake, I still don't really know how to do that. There's other people in the company who take care of the visual stuff. The only thing that I really knew how to do was just start a blog and start writing things and putting them up there. And in retrospect, it was really naive, probably not the right way to go about it, but it was turned out to be the perfect way to get to know Andy a little bit, because he started reading my blog. I was of course familiar with the Fried Egg. Fried Egg was more in its early days when I started blogging, and we really kind of hit it off just by reading each other's writing. And he recognized that, just from my writing, that I was somebody who could help him edit stuff because Andy has really great ideas about golf course architecture. But one of the things that he likes to get help with is editing stuff and making sure that things are formed so that, they can be communicated to an audience in as clean a way as possible. And that's one of the things, given my background, that I was able to do. And so there was kind of a natural symbiosis that started there.
That's very similar to the dynamic of me and Ashton. I'm more of in line with Andy. I'm the big picture idea guy. I throw a lot at Ashton, and then he filters through my bullshit and picks out the gems that are in there, and then we kind of run with those. So Ashton is definitely you, and I'm definitely Andy when it comes to kind of the way we flow and go through things.
Perfect.
I'm the one who's like, let's have a rundown. And like, I'm over here sweating. I'm like, we're at 57 minutes. We haven't got through most of this. And I'm like, oh my God.
I was just thinking that when Chris was talking about it, I was like, man, Ashton, you got to start moving here. I'll keep my answers very brief from now on.
No. It's more of, I think what it is, I'm sure you guys feel this way. It's more the anxiety of these tend to always go long, if anything.
Yeah.
But I just more the way I grew up being very kind of type A OCD is like, it's like, I'm like, what if we're just sitting here looking at each other, right? Like, what if Garrett?
Yeah, exactly. What if we have nothing to talk about?
Like,
yeah.
At least give me something to work with.
Exactly. You over prepare for things. You always got to over prepare, because then at least, because the worst thing is to be under prepared. And if you over prepared, then fine. You did a little bit too much work. That's not the end of the world.
And did I know that we were going to bond over 25-degree hybrids? I did not, and I'm happy about it. So, no, but I think for me, looking through kind of the middle section, the one thing I want to ask you before we kind of get some quick hitters and get you out of here, we recently listened to the pod about What's Next and kind of golf course architecture, talking about how, the whole minimalist Core Crenshaw, we might be moving more towards, I don't know the right word, maximalist movement, sort of like how to find this new area. But forget that for a second. Like, if I just gave you $10 million working together and I said, Garrett, you can do whatever the fuck you want to do. You can do whatever you want to do. What kind of course would you build? Well, what would you do?
$10 million.
Well, whatever. No. How about this? No budget. Like,
No,
we could go Scottsdale
oh my
National
God,
style.
I need a budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, this is going to sound really cringy and virtuous, but I would just like to make a really basic golf course with some interesting contours and no bunkers that would be super cheap to play and that didn't even necessarily have incredibly interesting architecture in it, but was fun and cheap, and there was good movement in the land, and you could just go there and play golf. Because I'm more and more frustrated by the rising costs of the game. And I realize it's part of an overall picture of what's going on in the world and in the economy right now. But after the COVID period in golf, there was a little bit of hope that the golf industry was kind of returning to its roots and rediscovering some of the things that were important. You know, carts aren't important. Rakes and bunkers aren't important. Maybe we can get rid of this stuff. But I'm sensing kind of a regression to more and more expensive stuff as the kind of threat of the pandemic recedes. We're just kind of making some of the same mistakes. And I'm just not seeing a lot of affordable, basic golf being built. And I'd like to see more of that. And, there are golf courses out there that kind of fit the description. There's, I haven't seen it, but a course in Shaska, Minnesota called the Loop at Shaska is opening next year. And it's like a really fun kind of short course concept that I think could be delightful. But I just wish that there were more projects like that. We're getting a lot of kind of incredible architecture at private courses right now. And I don't want to discount that. I think that's really cool work. And I'm glad that architects are getting the opportunity to kind of stretch themselves and push the art form. And, I like that stuff. That's great. But I'm a little bit worried about where public golf is going from here. And I'm a little bit concerned that, public courses that do renovations and do some of the work that, say, Andy and I have suggested that they do on the podcast are using it as a pretext to kind of jack up rates immediately. And so I wish that more courses were prioritizing affordability and just fun. And so, if I were to make a golf course, I'd love to have one where I myself would feel comfortable just kind of showing up and going and playing. And, I wish there were more of those in the world. And again, I know that sounds like I'm, that's overly virtuous or something. And, that's not really what I would do if I were given money to build a golf course, but that's kind of what I feel, and what I'd like to see more of.
So I'm very similar along the lines of you, Garrett, with that. And so I appreciate the Mike Kaisers of the world that are creating these meccas for people to be able to go to. But I'm going to tell you right now, like, we're on the West Coast, and if we don't have to fly, we don't have to do all these things to get to Bandon. Us being in Oregon, it's a 4 or 5 hour drive, depending on where you're at. And it's still going to cost you $1,500 to spend, 4 or 5 days there to play all the courses and really dive deep into there. And that's really out of the range for most golfers in the world to be able to afford something like that. And one guy that I have been harping that I love that a lot of people outside the West Coast don't know of as an architect is Dan Hickson. And I really love what he's doing on the public golf side of things with Bandon Crossings in Wine Valley. And my favorite new course that he's done is Bar Run.
Bar Run. Yeah, just opened 18 holes this year.
And I got to go out there and talk to him for a couple hours and play the preview before they opened up the entire course. And the rate that they're charging, the little, cottages that they're putting on the first hole, it being an RV park, and everything about what they're doing there is the essence of what I love about public golf. And exactly what you were kind of saying, it's not the most intricate, crazy design that I've ever played, but the undulations and the green complexes and what he's done with the piece of land that he was given inside of a rock quarry is so good. And for the price that you pay to go out there and play, which is I think between $60 and $70 to play, is just, I mean, we need more of that. And I love what Dan is doing. And Dan's story, on the other hand, is just awesome because, he started out as a PGA pro and just literally changed the name on his door to architect from PG. Like, he didn't train anywhere.
He was out of Columbia Edgewater, right?
Yep.
And his parents were, and his dad was, I believe, a pro himself. And yeah, Dan is one of the great guys in the golf industry and a super talented architect. Sylvie's Valley Ranch is also more of his work. But one thing that Dan has done that I'd love to see more of, he represents a lot of the things that I think are kind of lacking right now in golf architecture. He just kind of shows up at public courses, local courses, and does a few things here and there, gives them some help. He did some really cool stuff at Laurelwood, which is a 9-hole course in Eugene.
I just played
where,
that.
It wasn't like a big renovation. Yeah. Did you meet Will Benson, the superintendent there?
I just went out secretly,
great guy.
Paid my dues and went out and played it. And I played that the same day that I played Diamond Woods.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's some cool little places out there, but Laurelwood is it's great because all they really did was change a couple of holes. They just made a couple of alterations to holes. They did a bit of a reroute, rebuild a couple of greens to solve some safety problems, and Dan Hickson was helping him. And Dan basically went out there and a bulldozer and not a whole lot of other help and shaped a couple of greens. And they turned out great because, Dan Hickson's on a bulldozer making these greens. They're going to turn out pretty interesting. And, it didn't cost a lot. They're looking to do maybe a few other things, but those are the sorts of kind of low cost renovations that I'd love to see because Laurelwood didn't raise its rates because it rerouted. Didn't raise them much, at least. But the golf course became better. They're making that golf course better all the time. And that's the kind of stuff I really love to see.
So outside of Dan, who would you say, might be unknown or might be up and coming in the architecture realm, that you would put, your thumb on and say they're doing what should be done for the golf industry and it's going to help sustain the industry?
Well, geez, I'm not sure who people have heard of and who people haven't heard of. If we're talking just kind of outside the big four, outside of Corin Crenshaw, Tom Doak, David Kidd, and Gil Hance. And, to be fair, all of those golf architects that I just mentioned do some good local work too. Gil Hance is going to do some stuff at West Palm Beach in Florida and has been involved in some local projects. Tom Doak has, consistently lent his services to kind of off the wall local projects. Common Ground is a great model of what, a public golf course can be. And he's also helping at East Potomac out in Washington, DC. So I don't want to discredit what those architects have offered at the local level, giving up their rates and just doing some fun architecture. But an architect who thinks a lot about local courses and about what a community golf course should look like and can be is Andy Staples. He's done mainly renovation work, but he has an original course out in New Mexico called Rockwind Community Links. And Rockwind embodies a lot of the things that Andy talks about when it comes to local courses. People should look it up. He also did an incredible renovation of Meadowbrook Country Club. That's a private course just outside Detroit. And that shows kind of what Andy is capable of in terms of architecture. But he's also somebody who's very willing to work with public and local and municipal courses and not only make the golf course better, but also connect the golf course with the community and offer some services to the community that bring people into the course. And so I think Andy is a great thinker about that people should look up. But, you know, a number of other architects do cool work at the local level as well. Brian Schneider, I know, was helping out at Glen Golf Park, I think it's called, in Madison, Wisconsin, which is a project that was funded by the Kaiser family, by Michael Kaiser, Mike Kaiser's son. And I think that's going to turn out really cool, and Schneider was out there quite a bit. So there's some fun little things happening here and there. I don't want to portray it as though, you know, the local golf architecture scene is dead. It's just that it's a little more rare. But in terms of somebody who thinks about this stuff all the time and has a nice worked out philosophy of local golf, Andy Staples would probably be my guy.
And leaning off of that, you know, one thing that we always kind of, you know, there's been so many eras of golf course architecture. One thing that we wanted to ask you is, if you had to choose an era to live in or to be able to be in with new courses being built, what era of architecture would be your staple time frame for you to be able to live in when it was up and coming? And that could be modern, or it could be all the way back to the 1800s or early 1900s.
Yeah, it would be hard not to go back to old Tom Morris, to go back to like the 1870s when he was really traveling around and doing his thing. And that would be fascinating. It would be like going back and meeting Shakespeare or something. You'd find out a lot that people don't know. You know, nobody really has a good idea of what Shakespeare's life was like. And I think that we're similarly, you know, we know more about old Tom Morris because he was a relatively modern figure, and there's been a lot of stories told about him. But I'm not sure that, you know, he didn't leave behind any writings of his own, really, for instance. And so it'd be fun to meet him. But I kind of got off on a tangent there. Where I'd really like to be, and this is a place and a time, is the UK, the British, or the English golden age. People often think of the golden age of golf architecture as being the 10s, 20s, and 30s. And that's true in America. That's the U.S. golden age of golf course architecture, from basically when C.B. Macdonald opened National Golf Links to when the Lido shut down, you know, in the 30s during the Depression. Those are kind of the bookend points of the U.S. golden age. The golden age of golf architecture, I think, happened earlier in Great Britain, with Harry Colt and Tom Simpson and Abercrombie and other architects like that doing really interesting work in England, in the Heathlands. And a lot of that was done in the first decade of the 20th century. And to me, that time period in that place is so interesting because basically they were inventing a new kind of golf course architecture. And I would just like to talk to those people. What they did was highly influential in the U.S. Golden Age. It's many of the architects who came up in that scene, like Alistair Mackenzie, ended up being very influential in the U.S. in the 20s and 30s. And so where it really started was with people like John Lowe and Harry Colt in England in the first decade of the 20th century. They really kind of rethought the whole thing. And they're very, very intelligent people. Would have just been fascinating to talk to them and to see them do work.
Perfect. Just thinking about going back and being able to kind of be a fly on the wall for the old Tom Morris stuff would be fascinating.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, because how did he really design golf courses? What was he really thinking? Like, we don't know. All these Golden Age architects wrote exactly what they were thinking. Like Alistair Mackenzie, Harry Colt just told us what their philosophy was. Old Tom Morris didn't do that. I don't know. Like, he obviously had something going on, but I'm not sure what it was.
Yeah.
We needed Garrett Morrison by his side, documenting and writing down what he was saying out there.
I'm willing.
On his mule, I guess. Or beautiful. Well, to get us out here, these will be more quick hitters. You know, as an homage to Shotgun Star, to talk about the Cameron Zone. We'll call this kind of the favorite zone.
Zone.
I'm curious for you. We talked about episode. Like, since you've been at the Fried Egg, what has kind of been your favorite piece of content, whether episode, video? Like, what is the project that you're kind of most proud of, or you're like, yeah, you finished that up, and you're like, that is something I'm really, really proud of?
Well, as far as content that I headed up, I think that the series that we released earlier this year on Robert Trent Jones, it's a 3-part podcast series, was it's something that I'm really proud of, and I hope that people enjoyed. Took a lot of time to put it together, and I learned a lot in the process, and I think that it represented kind of some development in terms of our ability to produce a narrated documentary style podcast, and it's called The Open Doctor and His Monster, 3 episodes, and that was something that I was really happy to put out. And as far as something that other folks at my company have done, Cameron Hurtis is kind of edits our videos and produces our videos, and he's really fantastic with that. I loved, as far as a particular podcast episode, Andy's interview with Don Plasek from earlier this year, maybe it was late last year, was really, really fantastic.
He's the maps guy, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
All things maps.
I thought that was such a great podcast. I loved Don Plasek in that podcast. I thought it was just fantastic.
Yeah. I'm curious, Garrett, how long, like that 3-part Open Doctor series, how long did that take you? From how long did you spend on that? It took
way too long. Geez, I mean, I worked on it off and on. Like I was doing other stuff at the company, but in total, I started it in December of 2021, and we released it, I believe, in June, maybe, of this year. So it was on my mind for a good 6 months. Yeah.
Wow.
That's
okay. Favorite public course in the state of Oregon, is that Forest Hills, or is that just give a different answer?
Man, I mean, well, would you consider Bandon Trails to be a public course?
If anybody can pay to play it and it's accessible to the public, we consider it public.
Sure. Yeah, I would too. Yeah. I mean, that's the definition, but sometimes, public carries the connotation of, maybe a little more affordable than a pure resort course. But yeah, Bandon Trails is, I mean, that's that place is a masterpiece. But in terms of the Portland area, yeah, Forest Hills would be the one.
And then
yeah, I got to give you guys a shout out sorry, Chris, for the guides. We have not, I have not played Trails yet, but the way you kind of explained the holes in the meadow versus I have not seen that place yet, but I feel like going into it, I already have a sense of place that I don't know that I even would have realized that. So I thought all of those guides have been interesting, but that was the one where it was like, what was it? Out of 1 and 18 are on the dune, then you go to the meadow, and it was like, okay, there's a real sense of place here that I don't think I would have noticed without that specific video. So I thought that one, they've all been great. Like, of course, love the Paso Tiempo one.
Cool.
But the Trails one, where I was like, this is going to make me view this experience differently when I go play this course.
Well, thanks. That's great to hear.
So no borders on this question. Favorite public course that you've played anywhere? And that doesn't have to be in the States.
Well, I've played
the old course.
most of my golf in the States. So I haven't been to Scotland. I'm a fraud.
You didn't go on that trip?
I did not go on that trip. Those guys just went gallivanting across Scotland and left me at home, and they're assholes is what my take on that is. But Cameron, Andy, and Brendan got to go to Scotland. They did a great job kind of documenting that trip. But so I would focus on the U.S. and probably my favorite public course here is Wild Horse Golf Club in Nebraska.
Sheesh.
I think that place is one of the best courses in the country.
Probably one of the
public
best
or private
episodes you guys have done too. That episode was fantastic on Wild
Horse. That was a fried egg guide as well. Yeah. Yeah. We were sitting there in one of the cabins at Wild Horse talking about the course, and we had just played it. Basically, it was fresh in our minds. And man, that golf course is astonishing. I think it's underrated. I mean, a lot of people talk about it, but when they talk about it, they're usually like, oh yeah, in terms of affordable public courses, that's like one of the best ones. I'm like, no, in terms of golf courses in the country, private,
awesome.
Public, whatever, that is one of the best ones. Like, it's seriously that good. And I think that maybe it's a little bit less spectacular than some of the top rated private courses in the country. If we're talking about like Sandhills Golf Club, which is consistently considered to be a top 5 or top 10 American course. But man, that it's so well designed. The land is beautiful, ideal. Every hole is strong. Yeah, I would go to bat for that course. I think my favorite public course. I mean, obviously the Bandon ones, I could equal it. I could just as well say Bandon Trails to that question too.
So there were 2 episodes that probably got me most excited that you guys have done to go and play these 2 courses. And one was the Wild Horse episode that you guys did, but earlier kind of in the Friday Andy did an episode on Lasonia. And so
yes.
When I went and trained with Club Champion in Chicago, I was the only guy that they gave a rental car. And so I decided on my day off, because we only got one day off a day while we were out there training, I drove all the way to Lasonia and played. And man, that was completely worth the drive. And everything that Andy kind of put up on a pedestal when he talks about that golf course, I mean, it all stood tall. And it was so, being from the West Coast, it's a course in style of architecture I have never been able to experience in my entire life, because the West Coast, we have a variety of courses and styles, but it's all relative. There's like 3 or 4 kind of styles on the West Coast that kind of is a encompassing theme that you see outside of Bandon and some of these outliers. But Lasonia was something that I've never been able to experience, and it's hard for me to explain to people how different you have to play in those type of architectural, gems that you find. And it just blew me away. And I'm so excited to get out to Wild Horse, because how you guys speak about it, you guys get excited about courses, but there's particular courses that we as listeners can tell that you guys are particularly really excited about.
Yeah. Yeah, and the ones from this year for me were Wild Horse and Cape Arundel in Maine. Those were the ones that I probably just I was most surprised by. I expected good things going into them, and they over-delivered. So, yeah, love Wild Horse.
So since you guys host one of your guys' fried egg events out at Soul Park the week before we host our cookout,
the Boomerang.
What would you say your favorite hole is at Soul Park?
Okay, so this is a tough question. I think I would go with 7, par 4, kind of going up the hill, big bunker on the left, which, in order to shorten the hole, it's a pretty longish hole, especially kind of going up the hill. You want to have maybe a shorter iron instead of, for me, it would be like if I played out to the right, to the outside of the dog leg on that hole, I'd have, probably a 6 or a 7 iron or something like that. And if I take on the bunker, I might get myself a 9 iron or a wedge, but you do not want to be in that bunker. It's super nasty. And then the green is just fantastic. The way that it's sited, the way that the mountains are behind it, the way that the Barranca is behind it, and then the internal contours in that green might be the most interesting of any green on the course. So yeah, really love 7. I think also 9 is super
That's
cool.
where I was going to go. 9 is my favorite hole on the course.
Yeah.
And most of the people that came, everybody loves the punch bowl. I think number 5 at its soul.
Yeah, that's 5. Yeah. The punch bowl. And then, the par 5 before that, number 4 would also be one that would be in the running for me. I love that green. I think that's a really unique green complex on 4. It's like basically a big ridge running through the middle of a boomerang green. And that's where then the name of our event came from. So really think that's a cool hole as well.
I love that. And so, because it's such a big talking point within the shotgun start, we have to ask, what are your feelings on rotisserie chicken?
Okay, so well, people know the background on this. I feel like this is...
I'm telling you, we have a lot of people that are listeners of the Shotgun Start and Fried Egg. So if you guys don't know,
so Brendan
go
Porath
listen to
hates rotisserie chicken. Yeah, he viscerally hates... Well, you know what? It's exaggerated the extent to which he hates rotisserie chicken, but he went on a rant one time about how disgusting rotisserie chicken is just because Andy mentioned that he had gone to get a rotisserie chicken for dinner one night, and Brendan was like, I'm going to take this moment to burn you down.
Yeah. And for context, it's when his baby brand new daughter like blew out a diaper on date night, and so like it was also like,
so instead of the date, he got a rotisserie chicken. Oh, that's funny. Yeah. Okay, so here's the thing. When Brendan talks about rotisserie chicken, what he says is that on its own, it's pretty disgusting. Only when you put it in its proper context is it acceptable. And I would just moderate that a bit to say, on its own, rotisserie chicken is pretty disappointing. It's not the thing to do. But if you put it in a sandwich, if you put it in a stew, it's quite good and very convenient. And as long as you get a nice Costco rotisserie chicken, that you aren't just showing up at some random grocery store and getting some shitty rotisserie chicken, then you'll be all right. So that would be my take on it. What about you guys?
Actually, I sent Ashton a picture. I actually ate a Costco rotisserie chicken on Monday, and I think you're on the same level where, the Whole Foods or the Costco or a little bit more upscale places to go get it. Don't walk into your local. We're on the West Coast, so I'm going to say Safeway. Safeway isn't, outside of the West Coast, but Safeway is not the place you want to go, or Albertsons or any of those local grocery stores. Like, they're disgusting. Don't
get the rotisserie chicken at Food for Less.
No, they cook them in the morning and they sit there under a hot light for the entire day. So by the time it's
nasty.
Dinner time, it's dried out and gross. But with Costco, there's a million people that run through there every day, so they're putting new chickens out like every 2 hours.
Yeah.
So you're getting something fresh. Same with Whole Foods isn't going to keep out a bunch of really nasty stuff. So I think it's particular where you go. But yeah, I think Brendan was a little bit of eccentric when he went in on his rotisserie rant. But
well, the whole reason I was the moron who transcribed it, though, was it was actually nothing rotisserie chicken. It was that, to Andy's point, he misremembered. Like, he said that it was purely about the presentation, where if you read, again, what I transcribed like an idiot, he was going in on the rotisserie chicken. But what I have to do is, and maybe you can communicate this to him for me, or next time you're in the Bay Area, Garrett, Zuni Cafe here in San Francisco, I think it used to have
next time he's in NorCal,
like adjacent to,
not Central California. Next time Garrett's in NorCal.
Yeah, there you go. That's a whole other terrible take.
But Zuni Cafe is like basically supposed to have basically like the best rotisserie chicken in the world. Like, people go there.
Okay.
It's like people will go there before the opera, or like they'll wear like suit and tie. It's like a French restaurant, and like what you get is the rotisserie chicken and fries there.
Wait, people go eat rotisserie chicken and then go to the opera?
Yes.
Wow. San Francisco
look up,
is a wild place.
After we hang up, look up Zuni Cafe.
I will. I'm sure it's delicious.
It's very, very elevated. I actually haven't had it because you have to allow 90 minutes them to cook it. But maybe there can be kind of like a meeting in the middle of, Brendan can only have Michelin star. But then here's the deal, though. If we tell Brendan there's Michelin star dessert chicken, he's going to be like, you yuppie San Francisco.
Yeah.
Like,
and he's going to be right. That's the thing, is that you're not going to be able to deny the correctness of that attitude. Yeah.
I think he's correct.
Yeah.
Well, Garrett, we thought this was going to be like 45 minutes.
Oh, man.
It's been an hour and a half.
Oh, man.
Cannot thank you enough, especially with the wife and kids getting home. So thank you so much for coming on. We really, really appreciate it.
Of course. Yeah. Pleasure to talk with you guys. Thanks for inviting me on.
Absolutely. And Garrett, when the weather gets better, because of course we're in the Pacific Northwest and it's like 33 degrees outside, me and you are going to have to go out and hit the course and go out and play when Ashton comes back up here in the spring.
That'll be great.
Just
would love it.
Me and Garrett just hitting 25-degree hybrids everywhere.
Just launching them straight up in the air, landing soft on the green. It's going to be beautiful.
All right,
amazing.
Garrett. Thank you so much.
Garrett. Have a great night, okay?
You guys too.